Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Bombardment of besieged Syrian city of Homs intensifies. Egypt's prime minister dismisses U.S. threats to cut off aid. And al-Shabab claims responsibility for Mogadishu suicide bombing. Mosaic, world news from the Middle East, begins now.
It was a bloody dawn in Homs as the Syrian regime continues to use an iron fist on the city's neighborhoods. More than 50 people were killed during the early morning hours in an attack described as the most violent. Army and security forces stormed several of Homs's neighborhoods, most notably Baba Amr, which endured heavy shelling. The residents issued an urgent appeal to protect the children and women, as well as provide aid to the injured. The situation in Homs is not much different from the one in Daraa or Idlib, amid the sounds of gunfire and calls for relief and aid. Al-Shebab reports.
The city of Homs spent the night under heavy shelling and woke up this morning to a fierce attack by Syrian armed forces. The shelling targeted the neighborhoods of Baba Amro, Al-Khalidiyya, Biada, Qarn al-Zaytun, Rifai, and Wadi al-Arab in a bid by the army and security forces to storm them. Columns of smoke were seen rising from several homes, which were either razed to the ground or partially destroyed over their occupants, raising the death toll by the minute in light of this unprecedented attack on the city. Activists in Homs said the shelling is targeting water networks and power lines, amid reports that 40% of the city's homes have been damaged and some areas completely destroyed. This video leaked from one of the city's homes, which was turned into a bleak field hospital, shows that dozens of injured are being left without any basic medical supplies. And this video shows members of the Free Syrian Army who vowed to defend civilians and provide medical aid and medicine if available. In Homs, there is no evidence of the reforms promised by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad at the beginning of the uprising. The only evidence here points to heavy gunfire and bombings that continue to rock Homs's neighborhoods, which are rejecting the use of gunfire and an iron fist to deal with their demands, most notably freedom and the downfall of the regime. Another voice is echoing across Syria's Homs, which seems to be enduring more than its share of the shelling. It's the voice of women and children who sought refuge in basements to escape the shelling. From these basements, they issued an appeal for relief in the hopes that someone will hear them and protect them from the indiscriminate shelling.
Don't they fear God? Isn't it a sin to leave this infant at this shelter with no heater? Isn't what's happening to this little girl a sin?
From central to southern Syria, particularly Daraa, the epicenter of the uprising against al-Assad's rule, Syrian women are crying for help amid the piles of dead men's bodies. In the streets of Daraa, residents chanted slogans denouncing President al-Assad and the army's crackdown. And this was the regime's response, which seems to be blaring louder for now.
These are live images from the city of Daraa, the epicenter of the protests against the Syrian regime. The residents took to the streets in funeral processions to mourn their dead, with dozens of victims continuing to fall on a daily basis. Today, the Syrian army launched the most violent campaign against the city of Homs. The army started a pre-dawn operation by shelling several neighborhoods in Homs and storming several others. Among the dead were several children.
Egyptian Prime Minister Dr. Kamal al-Ganzouri said the military council will remain in power until the end of June, and that what is happening in Egypt is now considered a greater naksa, or setback, than that of 1967. Al-Ganzouri described the current events as an obstruction of the government's decisions, affirming that Egypt does not kneel to anyone and will make a strong comeback. Al-Ganzouri also said in a previous statement that Egypt will not change its position with regards to foreign funding for non-governmental organizations, despite the U.S.'s threat to cut off aid. Al-Ganzouri's statement comes after the Egyptian judiciary, which is investigating illegal funding for active local organizations in Egypt, accused these organizations of conducting illegal political activities. 3 U.S. senators warned Egypt that the relationship between the two countries is going through one of its worst phases after the Egyptian judiciary decided to take 19 American activists to court.
The Egyptian judges did not mitigate the campaign launched by authorities against non-governmental organizations in Egypt that receive foreign funds. Their decision summarizes the case by accusing these organizations of conducting illegal political activities.
فهو تفتيش قانوني إذن صادر من مختص وفقا للقانون وليس مداهمة وليس.
So this is a legal examination. The decision was issued by legal experts in accordance with the law. It is not a raid or a storming or an attack. This point must be made clear. The second point is that during the investigation and after inspecting multiple international and foreign organizations illegally operating in Egypt, we issued a number of decisions to put many foreign defendants who were included in the investigation on the travel ban and restricted entry lists.
Dunn is one of those placed on the list to either be investigated or tried at a later time. He not only views the case as a personal matter, but considers it part of a campaign against civil society in Egypt.
I think there was a lot of optimism.
I think that there was a lot of optimism after the revolution, not only among Egyptians but also among Americans. There were hopes for a pure transition to real democracy, but the result has been disappointing in the last year because of the military council's actions.
Dunn links the judicial referrals of 43 non-governmental organization workers to U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's statement that failing to put an end to the conflicts may lead to a cutoff of American aid to Egypt. He believes the referrals are an attempt by Egyptian authorities to affirm their patriotism. And while the Americans interpret this move as a message directed at them, some Egyptian revolutionaries consider it a message to them as well. The Military Council, and before it, President Hosni Mubarak, has always said that those taking to the street are working for what it refers to as a foreign agenda. Najla Abu Marai, BBC.
Al-Shabab al-Mujahideen movement in Somalia claimed responsibility for a bombing near Hotel Muna, adjacent to a government district in Mogadishu. The movement said in a statement that the attack targeted a number of Somali members of parliament and officers in the Somali military intelligence service. The bombing was carried out with explosive devices placed in the area. The attack killed 11 people and wounded approximately 15 others. Meanwhile, despite the still unstable security situation, the Somali capital, Mogadishu, is witnessing efforts to restore order after 2 decades of wars that have led to overwhelming chaos in Somalia. The Mogadishu municipality began attempts to revive the role of traffic police, despite their low competence and the deteriorated conditions of roads and public facilities in the city.
These men are trying to remove the impact of war in a country that has hardly known anything else for over 2 decades. Traffic police have resumed their duties, punishing drivers who violate traffic laws such as driving without a license. This has not happened in many years. The administration in Benadir province is hoping this means a new beginning for restoring life to this city, even if it resolves only one of the many needs of the city, which suffered from neglect and destruction during the long years of war.
90% of the city was destroyed. Reconstructing and restoring order to the city requires significant funds. Despite that, we will not stand idly by. We are trying to impose order on the street, and we only act within the limits of our capabilities.
In order to accelerate the success of this task, a bureau was opened to handle car registrations and to prepare traffic signs that will be installed on every street. The bureau will also teach drivers, who mostly learned to drive during the wars, to understand traffic signs.
We used to have many problems in the streets. We are happy about every step taken to organize the traffic.
The hope for reviving life in the capital grew after the armed conflicts eased when al-Shabab al-Mujahideen fighters withdrew from the city. However, the country still faces many challenges, such as the low competency of the staff and the fragile security situation, which may hinder the planned progress for restoration.
We do not have motorcycles to chase law-violating vehicles, and we don't have anything to tow cars in accidents. We are short of equipment to help the traffic services, but I have high hopes that we will overcome this difficult phase.
This is a new phase that may remove the atmosphere of fear and anxiety that has haunted these streets for many years. Gradually, small changes are happening. They may not mean anything to people in developed countries, but in the eyes of a generation that knows nothing but war, these changes are a source of hope that public services will improve in their city, which has always produced news of either famine or armed conflicts. Omar Mahmoud, Al Jazeera, Mogadishu.
أعلن الرئيس اليمني علي عبد الله صالح أنه سيعود من الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية.
Yemeni President Ali Abdullah Saleh said he will return to his country from the United States this month. He added that he will return before the Yemeni presidential elections scheduled for February 21st. Saleh said in a statement posted on the Defense Ministry's website that he will return to his homeland at the end of his treatment to participate in the presidential elections.
للمشاركة في الانتخابات الرئاسية. In
the northern Yemeni province of Saada, sectarianism and regionalism led several members of the military force to be dismissed and denied pay. They have since announced their defection and can be seen participating in protests demanding the downfall of the regime. They are asking to be reinstated to their positions.
Across different Yemeni provinces, officers and soldiers offered their resignation from military units to join the revolution for change. The most notable resignation was announced by the leader of the armored division, who had supported the Riyadh agreement and whose forces played the same role as Saleh's forces. Then, members of his forces began defecting from the regime.
I joined the army in 2007. Then I joined the armored division. We were stationed for about 2 years when they made us flee the military camp. They stripped us of our rights. They stole our source of livelihood. Where are our salaries from Ali Mohsen al-Akmar? This is his signature. They came to our unit and said, "You are Houthis from the Moran region. You don't get a salary."
Images of soldiers and officers from the defected unit recently appeared following their participation in the revolutionaries' festivals in Saada. They were dismissed and denied their salaries for different reasons.
It is a protest to demand the formation of a committee composed of soldiers and officers who were dismissed for racist, partisan, and sectarian reasons in the military camps.
Houthi leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi spoke against the exclusionary practices applied to the residents of Saada.
They want a civil state. They want a national independent army that is not under the control of foreign powers. An army that believes in fighting on the basis that Israel is its first enemy, not Saada, not Taiz, not the south, or any other Yemeni area.
Defected demonstrators in front of the Saada provincial government headquarters are demanding their rights and their reinstatement at their workplaces. They don't view their affiliation to Saada province or even the Houthis as a valid reason for their dismissal.
They are accusing us of being Houthi members. Belonging to this sect, this group, is an honor. They are Yemenis. They are with the revolution.
From across different military units, they were dismissed, fired, and denied their salaries, with the only justification being sectarianism and regionalism. Abdulrahman al-Abed al-Allam from the northern Yemeni Saada province.
One month has passed since the violence in South Sudan's Jonglei state killed more than 3,000 people and left nearly 90,000 in need of humanitarian assistance. Now the government and the donor agencies are struggling to help those in need. Eva Morgan has the details from Juba.
Desperate, hungry, and in need of shelter. These are the situations of the almost 90,000 people whose lives were devastated by the recent intercommunal violence in South Sudan's fragile Jonglei state. The violence, which has led to the death of over 3,000 people, has been launched a month ago, yet many still remain displaced from their homes and in need of humanitarian assistance to survive.
We have a situation now where 88,000 people are displaced just here in Pibor town. The government, I know, is extremely concerned about this and has to do more and is thinking about how it can work on its disarmament program. The capacity of the United Nations, the capacity of the government, what exists on the ground at local level is all being stretched now, and we're facing a situation looking forward to the next 2 to 3 months where it's possible that things will get even worse.
A situation which, if it gets worse, would not only be because of the government's failure to disarm the civilians, a solution proposed by many sides and believed to be the answer to the crisis, but because sending emergency relief to those in need would be close to mission impossible with the approach of South Sudan's rainy season.
Soon the rainy season is going to start after 1 month, and if we fail to deliver the necessary relief to those affected population before the rainy season, it will be difficult to relieve them or to send the supply, humanitarian supply, by air, because it will cost a lot of money, and we don't have money for that.
And whether the government fails to disarm the civilians in Jonglei, or it fails to find ways to continue with the humanitarian relief supply, even during the rainy season, which threatens to bring a humanitarian catastrophe, the victims remain to be the helpless people of the state, who have nowhere to turn to but the government. Jonglei state now poses not only a security challenge to the national government, but also a humanitarian challenge which, if it fails along with the security challenge, it could fail the lives of over 100,000 civilians. Hiba Morgan, Press TV, Juba, South Sudan.
The Bahraini king is in Saudi Arabia on an official visit to mark a cultural festival between the two countries. King Hamad Al Khalifa was greeted by the governor of the capital, Riyadh, along with the Bahraini ambassador to Saudi Arabia. Activists have criticized the visit, calling it a humiliation of Bahrain's sovereignty. Riyadh last year sent thousands of troops and hundreds of tanks to Bahrain to crack down on the popular revolution. Protesters in Bahrain have repeatedly accused their government of trying to integrate the whole of their kingdom into Saudi Arabia. This, they say, is to safeguard their rule on the small Persian Gulf country. U.S. Chief Envoy to Afghanistan Mark Grossman has met with Taliban leaders as part of efforts to bring the militant group to the negotiating table. A senior Afghan official has said the talks were held in Qatar in late January. Grossman later briefed the Afghan President Hamid Karzai on the discussions when Karzai was visiting Italy. The Taliban have announced plans to open a political office in Qatar for the talks to go forward. Although the Afghan government has publicly supported the negotiations, it is concerned about being sidelined in the peace process. The Karzai government wants any talks with the Taliban to be led by Afghans.
National Labor Court remains in session at this hour in an effort to resolve the open-ended general strike which went into effect this morning. Histadrut Chairman Bahraini continues to call for the personal intervention of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. More in this report from IBA's Dennis Zinn.
Government offices, banks and much of the country's public transport facilities remained shut this morning, causing havoc for consumers as some 500,000 Israeli workers began an open-ended strike starting at 6 a.m. Many other service providers, such as the electric company, the country's hospitals and Magen David Adom ambulance units, worked at a reduced capacity. The strike went into effect after all-night talks between the Histadrut Labor Union and the Finance Ministry broke down. The sides were negotiating over the Histadrut's demands to bring the salary and benefits of contract workers in line with that of regular employees. Histadrut Chairman Bahraini said the utilization of employment agencies to evade paying proper compensation to workers is unacceptable. Finance Minister Yuval Steinitz said the Histadrut's demands are not realistic because the government cannot afford it. The government happens to be the country's biggest employer of contract workers. And you received a boost of support last night when the Bureau of Economic Organizations representing businesses in the private sector agreed to much of the Histadrut's demands. He now says that he would be satisfied if the government would follow suit. And he appealed to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to intervene. He said that if Netanyahu gave his backing to such an agreement, the strike would end immediately. Meanwhile, conditions at Ben Gurion Airport have reportedly almost returned to normal at this hour. This despite the fact that the facility was closed for 6 hours this morning. Airport official Shmuel Zakai said a well-planned system of damage control, including efficient rescheduling of flights, prevented undue chaos for now. Shutting down the country's international airport is always considered one of the strikers' heavy weapons, and international commuters should be wary if the dispute does not end soon. Dennis Zinn, IBA News.
Jerusalem and Washington have resolution, understanding, and agreement on how to deal with Iran. That's the word from Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman, who is currently in Washington for a round of talks with top American officials. IBA's Eli Wogelenter has the details.
Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman said today that he and U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton were in agreement on most of the issues raised in their meeting yesterday in Washington. At the top of that list, he said, there is understanding that Iran must be prevented from getting a nuclear weapon. Lieberman said Israel and the world should monitor the effects of the sanctions already put in place, and he thanked the United States for its recent efforts to levy new sanctions on the Islamic Republic. What was also deemed newsworthy about the meeting was the fact that the two diplomats met at all. It was the first face-to-face meeting between them in 18 months. The 30-minute meeting spanned the gamut of issues, including U.S.-Israel relations, Iran, Egypt, Syria, Middle East peace, Turkey, Iraq, and the new agreement between Fatah and Hamas. Afterwards, Lieberman met with Senator John McCain, who told reporters that the U.S. should start considering all options about Syria, including arming the opposition. The bloodletting has got to stop, he said. On Iran, McCain said it hasn't renounced its path toward the acquisition of nuclear weapons. Lieberman thanked McCain for U.S. support on Iran.
I would like to express my appreciation to your position and for the support for Israel. We appreciate the decision, very crucial decision regarding the sanctions. We are following and we are monitoring this decision. We are waiting that Iranians will give up their nuclear ambitions. The situation, we have a lot of items on our agenda: Egypt, Syria, Palestinians, and I will be happy to exchange views with senators, and we really appreciate our very close and very friendly relations.
Lieberman arrived in Washington on Monday for a 3-day visit. Upon his arrival, he attended a dinner with dozens of members of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. Eli Wogelenter, IBA News.
A group of Israeli youth posted images and interviews on YouTube confirming their refusal to serve in the occupation army. Their position comes in response to the army's aggression towards the Palestinian people.
This time, some are speaking out against military service in the occupation army from inside the Israeli security institution. And while this is not yet a mass movement, it is noteworthy in a state where security comes first and foremost.
The Israeli army is occupying another people. It is occupying the Palestinians.
Palestinian kids are being killed at Israeli checkpoints on their way to school.
A group of Israeli youths not only refused to serve in the occupation's military in protest of the army's treatment of Palestinians, but went as far as posting pictures and interviews on YouTube to justify their rejection to military service.
Many young Palestinians are thrown into Israeli jails for no reason.
The government says
the Israeli government claims its policies against the Palestinians aims to protect Israelis.
The Refuse Next phenomenon came about after the Second Palestinian Intifada in 2000, when the occupation intensified its aggression against the Palestinians. The Israeli government responded by arresting many of the soldiers, charging them with disobedience and refusing the mandatory service in the occupation army.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Wincoat Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows and more at linktv.org/mosaic. Airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories, world news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.